And welcome back to a special edition of JKLIVE here at Citizen Television. It's a very silent bench today. Bear with us because all my guests are deaf. Some of them from a very young age, others throughout their years. So we're going to be finding out their stories. We've got Richard on the far end. We've got Georgina right next to him. We've got Monica right there next. She's actually a sous chef. She's a chef at Villa Rosa Kempinski, and Joseph right next to me. I'm ably going to be assisted by our very own Yulan Zale right next to me, and we've got their own interpreters right here. It is a full house here on the bench, and we're going to get to know them a little better. So Yula, you were saying there's two types of signing, right? There's language and then there's...
Yes, so there is voice interpretation and then there is sign interpretation. So voice interpretation is from the deaf to the deaf is the one who's signing and the interpreter is voicing for her or him. And then the sign language interpretation is from the speaker. So in this case, Jeff, you'll be speaking, I'll be signing. That's sign language. Now that's sign interpretation. And then now voicing from them, and then now that's why they have the interpreters here who will be voicing for them.
Georgina, I've known you for many, many years. But the last time I interviewed you was 10 years ago. You reminded me.
Yes.
2014. Georgina, those who don't know your story, tell us your story.
So I became deaf when I was 9 years old. I remember I was sick. I had mumps for a very long time. So one night I went to sleep. So my mom was trying to wake me up to send me something from the bedroom, but I could not understand. It was raining so heavily, so I was assuming because it's raining, that's why I can't hear. But my mom was sending me something the second, the third time, the fourth time, and I brought something very different. And my mother slapped me, beat me up. So in the morning when I woke up, I was deaf.
My goodness.
So imagine that. Yes. So my world really changed, went upside down. So today you're hearing, tomorrow you're deaf. And of course, I started my issues from there. And so I had to go back to the same school where I was studying. And the teachers were saying, okay, she's deaf. How do we teach her? We don't know how to teach her. So what my parents did, they took me to the hospital and they tried to find what the problem is. The hospital advised my parents to buy me hearing aids. So if you saw me when I was in school, I had very big hearing aids. You know, it's something like a radio, but it was not working. And they wanted to support me to get back to school. And so they decided if I have hearing aids, then I'm able to go back to school. So I went back to the same school. I needed to adapt and to try, sit in front of the class, try to read what the teacher is saying, but it was really hard. It's really hard with lip reading because you get about just 30% of what is being spoken. And so I got a lot of support from my family. I thank my father so much because he gave me an opportunity to go to school. Because if I didn't go to school, I wouldn't be here where I am. And also the teachers who were really supportive to me. Some were trying to give me the notes to read for myself when I could not understand what was happening in class. So I passed primary school really well. I was called to Bunyore Girls High School in Vihiga, and I studied there. And I found a very good class teacher who was really supportive to me as well. So I would go to the library because when I sit in class, they would teach me, but I don't understand a thing. And so I needed to read myself. I always say that I read myself or I taught myself through school because I could not understand what the teachers were teaching me. So I had to try on my own to find ways to adapt to reading for myself and also to pass the exams. So I tried my best. I got an A- in KCSE. I wanted to be an engineer when I grow up. I remember when I got the letter for the university and I tried to go to the university, they told me, because I'm deaf, how are you going to learn and how do we teach you? So I remember when I needed to review the course for the university, I wanted to pick teaching and they said, okay, if they can't allow me to be an engineer, I can become a teacher so that I can teach other children to become the engineer that they want. So I went to Maseno University, trained to become a teacher. I taught for about a few years. I figured there were a lot of challenges because there are no learning materials, the teachers are not fluent in sign language, and that means that most of the deaf learners perform very poorly in school. And I said, I need to address this. I need to provide accessible digital content to support language acquisition, because deaf learners, when they get to school, they don't have any language. And so because of the process of the curriculum, I decided to do what I am doing right now, which is creating accessible digital content specifically for deaf learners. Thank you.
Wow. What a story. So, Monica, Georgina went deaf at 9 years old. You were very young when you lost your hearing.
Yeah, at 2 months old. 2 months, that's when my mom tried to voice to me and talk to me, but then nothing, I wasn't responsive. But when I became a young child, a toddler, they tried to talk to me, but I wasn't able to acquire any language. Then they took me to hospital. Then they did the audiologist tests, and that's when they found out that I was deaf. And I'm the only deaf person in my family. My mom really was sad about the case, that situation. So they were asking their friends, where do I take this child to school? Which school will I take her to? And that's when my mom found a school, and they took me to school, to a primary school. Eventually, my parents asked, so how do I handle a deaf child? The teacher at school taught my mom how to handle, and then they took me to Mumias, school for the deaf, and I was able to complete my high school education. Now, when it came to college level, I really struggled because I went to Current Technical School, and I was wondering which course should I take up. That's when I took up catering, and here I am as a pastry chef for Villa Rosa Kempinski. But honestly, the challenge was growing up as a deaf person. But later on, I got used to it.
Was it tough? Was it tough?
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. But honestly, it's not easy because as a child, you would want to play with different fellow kids. But as an adult, I just adapted to.
Did kids want to play with you, or would they run away from you?
No, my mom tried to create a good relationship between me and my siblings. And when I went to school, at primary school, I got courage, I got the confidence to interact with other students. So it was okay. But yeah, it was late for me to sign. It took me a while to learn sign language, but I was able to acquire the language. Even my siblings now can sign. It's not 100%, but they are able to sign, and we are able to hold a conversation.
Okay. Joseph, what is your story?
Thank you very much. And true, when I was born hearing, I could hear. But as I grew, before, I think around 6 months, around there, that's when I was told that I was brought up in an incubator. And then from an incubator is when now we kind of progressed well. But from class 1, 2, and 3, because I also began school late, at age around 14, due to some issues, I became deaf. And I remember one time, at around 6, my mother came early in the morning from the village and wanted to know what is happening, called my name, Baraza, Baraza. And there was no feedback. And therefore, they thought I was stubborn. Now, a slap on the back of my head, and I was like, no, I can't hear anything. I can't hear anything from you. So why was my father then in Mombasa? So my mother decided, let me call the father. There's something wrong with your son. So what happened is that my father, who was in Mombasa by then, in the army, said, bring that child here. And at first, they had thought that they will take me to a witch doctor to help me heal. But no, I had to be taken to Mombasa, at least from there, because we didn't want to the witch doctors in the village. So in Mombasa, we stayed for a while, and there were many people who would go to either look for sorceries, witch doctors, to seek from assistance. At least from there, my father, who worked at least around, made some gathered some information, and one time we went to a witch doctor what happened is that the witch doctor did not improve my hearing. So from one person to another, they would say drink a number of concoctions, blood, among other things. Take some snails, among other things to eat, to be able to heal or to help my hearing come back. So from there we went to church, and there was music with heavy music, and try to pray for me, but nothing happened. So I also remember even when we were in the church, we stood somewhere and they wanted me to stand near a speaker to try and test and through the microphone. But because of the noise, and I was around 14 years of age, I could see what the lips were saying. I could read. So, and then they said, hallelujah, because you can now say Baba. But that wasn't it. I couldn't hear anything. And from there they said, so now that you can hear, come here. So we went home, and he announced to everyone that, now he's back. He can hear, let's discuss something, because he can now respond. After some time, a bit of rest, the following day, nothing had changed. Nothing had changed. So what they decided is now, both parents decided, there was a bit of argument, and then what happened is that my father decided, let us go to the hospital, see if he can get some operation. And my mother was anti-operation. So there was a bit of tussle there. And then I remember I was almost going for an operation. However, they decided to take me to school from about class 5, around there. And the first time I went in, I didn't know any sign language in that school that I was taken to, because that is what happened. I could just see the teacher speak, but I couldn't hear anything that was being spoken. So I went back home, and I said, there are many people in that school who use sign language and I can't understand. Are they mad? And my mother said, no, that is your language. Those are your people. So tried to learn basic, because at the school at that time they were not teaching sign language. And remember, I was joining it when I was a bit older, in class 5. So, and then people were moving to class 6, and I had to move with them. So what happened was that they used to write a lot on the board, and I couldn't get. So I was later on also moved with hearing individuals to also mix with them, and I would also learn how to lip read, since I was the only one, and everyone in my class was hearing. So from there also, there was another challenge. There was no interpreter in the class, and that is what used to happen. The teacher would give gestures, but I couldn't get anything from this, what was being spoken. So the teacher said, so because you are deaf and someone is hearing who's next to you, kindly support your student or support your fellow student there. Then afterwards, during KCPE, after the exam, we went to Migori, or Kuja, a school. That is where I went to learn. And Kuja School is a school for the deaf. So from there, we went from 1, from 2, and I remember that time also the family, so that this deaf individual, we don't know about their future. We don't know about his future, and therefore, I think we are wasting school fees. However, my brother, who follows me, said, no, let me take care of him. Let me take care of him. And I remember at one time I stayed home for 2 years because there was no school fees, because they didn't think that I would be something in the future. So I did some work here and there in an Indian place. And then one time a teacher on the road asked me, have you been to school? Have you finished? And I was like, no, I haven't finished school. I haven't been to school and I haven't finished. So the teacher said, go back to school and I will support. So a church came in, was able to pay for my school fees, and my parents were now to cater for my pocket money. And that is how I was able to finish my schooling. And then from there, I went back to Mombasa, back to my family. And from there now, because now you have finished school, now you are on your own. Because the belief was this person cannot be anything in the future. Yep. So as time progressed, we did a little bit of things here and there, learned a bit of skills, and then there was an organization that came through, which was picking or identifying individuals to train them as counselors. The organization that was supporting us was LVCT Health at that time. So I was able to be trained and then modeled as I came back, also to go back to school, and that is how I progressed until where I am today.
You know, for people who are deaf, you people speak too much, you know. You speak a lot, huh? But it's okay. Richard, you lost your hearing as an adult. I mean, people who didn't hear you earlier on, you can actually speak, you can actually respond. How did you lose that hearing? What happened?
Well, I grew up as a hearing child. Went to school, primary, secondary as a hearing child. Then I joined a public university, that is University of Nairobi. During just the first semester, that is the first 3 months, I got some sickness, that is meningitis and cerebral malaria. So I think I just went the normal routine in the university, went back to the hostel, very tired, slept. In the morning, found myself in the hospital. So in the morning, I found myself in the hospital, lying in a bed, and at that very moment, I could not hear. So when I consulted the medics, they told me it is just something to do with, you know, quinine, they said it is toxic. So they told me I'll regain my hearing in a few weeks. I need to detoxify or something. Now, those few weeks changed to years. But you see, they gave me some hope after that period, and my life had just started because when I joined university, I quickly entered university politics and was also voted as a Secretary General in one of the second biggest university body. That is for the art student. So my life was just beginning, but all of a sudden, I became deaf, and you can imagine that transition. Everything I knew as a hearing person, and now I have to adapt to a world where there is no sound, everything is silent. It was a bit of a challenge. There was a lot of support from the university and from home, just to try and learn more about the new life. Also getting medication, you know, just like any other family and friends, people will try to be hopeful, tell you positive things. No one is ready to tell you something that might break your heart. You know, people try to be supportive.
Yeah.
I think during that period, the only group that I found a bit real was the deaf community, because they were direct. They just told me, you see, I was just like you, but here I am, I'm now deaf. I never regained my hearing. But if I meet hearing people, they were like, you know, I know a pastor somewhere in the river. I know a good pastor somewhere in Nigeria. I know someone who can just pray for you until I just pop, they open up. Others were like, you know, I come from which community? So they were like, you know, I can take you somewhere deep down in the village, and someone just do some magic. And because many people could not understand how you can speak, yet you can't hear. So they thought there must be some magic somewhere, you see? But all this didn't work. Of course, I tried to go to many hospitals, very many consultants. But the best thing is I was also reading a lot. And I was also advised to get a hearing aid. I remember one of the leading doctors, ENT specialists, imported an hearing device, an hearing aid from Australia. So I had to wait for a few weeks. Then I went for the fitting. When he fitted, he had advised me that it will work for me. But you see, my hearing loss is profound bilateral sensory neural hearing loss. That means that my cochlear nerve is dead. Basically, it's dead. So my outer and middle ear works very well, but my inner ear somehow, it doesn't stimulate sound, it doesn't go to the auditory nerve. So now even if you give me a powerful hearing aid, there is that gap. But of course, there is a gadget that you were speaking about, that is the cochlear implant. That bypasses the part that is already not working, and it stimulates the auditory nerve directly. that could work. But again, how much was it? It was around 2 to 3 million. Of course, I didn't have that amount. I was just a student in university, so that was not an option. So the only option that would work for me was to learn sign language and teach myself how to lip read, because no one teaches you how to lip read. Lip reading is not easy because we all move our lips differently. Even if we are saying the same thing, that's how we end up with different voices. And our cultures, our communities, you see, depend on your ethnic group, how you move your lips, how you pronounce words is different from the other community. So it's not easy lip reading, but again, I opted to learn sign language. I was enrolled at University of Nairobi. There is a project that teaches sign language, so I was learning sign languages. I also tried to talk with my friends in the university just to copy notes, because in the lecture hall, I could not hear what the lecturers were saying. So I just sat with my friends, tried to copy notes. Sometimes I just asked for books and photocopy the whole book. Basically, I just learned by myself until I completed my studies.
I was at the University of Nairobi today. I had a function there at the Chandarana Auditorium. Amazing place, huh?
Yeah.
They call it the University of Nairobi. The
University of Nairobi. That's right.
How long did it take you to learn to sign language, to sign?
Well, it wasn't easy. It took longer. I think it should have been shorter, but it took longer almost. To be fluent, to learn was easy, maybe 6 months. But to be fluent at it to an extent that I can use a sign language interpreter, that was longer and frustrating.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Yes.
Monica, do people walk up to you at the Kempinski and start talking to you because they don't know you're deaf, right? Do they walk up to you?
Yeah. Honestly, initially they would be scared to approach me once they find out that I'm deaf. But likely, my co-worker knows signs, knows a bit of sign, and also would tell them, okay, could you kindly tell her that I need this and this and this? Or I use writing back and forth. I would write back and forth with whoever wants to talk to me, because not everyone knows sign language. But other people who know sign language, they try to communicate a bit in sign, and they just try. Sometimes, maybe during lunch hours, which I try and meet up with them and teach them a few sign, but they really try to communicate with me in sign language.
Is it tough working in that kind of environment, Monica?
Yeah, honestly, because we write back and forth most of the time. So they write it down to me, and they tell me they want A, B, C, and D, and then that's it. But if it's maybe there is something that is important, maybe a meeting, then I get an interpreter to work side by side with me and then interpret for me.
What's your favorite pastry?
My favorite pastry is Black Forest and White Forest, and that's my favorite thing. Most of the time, I do decoration on the cakes, yes. So, and also in the morning, once I have decorated and I've laid down everything that's needed, but my favorite dessert, any dessert, I love preparing desserts.
Do you know how to make tiramisu?
Yeah. Yes, I do, Jeff. Yes, I do. Tiramisu, yeah, I do. I do know how to make it. And also, either the different types that are there, I also know how to.
Why chef and not accountant, doctor, engineer, whatever? Why did you choose to become a chef?
Okay. So when I completed my high school education, I went to Current Technical Center, and I was like, what do I study? Honestly, Jeff, I love cooking. I love cooking, because most of the time when I go to a hotel, I prefer tasting different meals, and honestly, that sparked an interest in me. And when I completed my Form 4, I went to Current, learned about catering, and I did my attachment, and I found it's very easy for me, so I stuck to it. And it's a very easy thing, and it's also a passion in me. That's why I decided to stick to it.
Georgina, what do you miss most about the outside world? Do you miss music? Do you miss Netflix? What do you miss most?
Not really. I grew up without TV, but I remember when I was growing up, I grew up in Kisumu, near the lake. And so I used to love the sound of the lake the sound of the waters. It's very calming and very peaceful, so I miss that. But in terms of music, yes, I love music and I love dancing, and I still go to church. I wish I could hear the words, and I love songs. But yes, so the beach and the music, and currently now I wish I could hear the voice of my children. So when they cry, when they call me mom, I wish I could hear that.
Oh, you're going to make us cry, Georgina. You're going to make us cry. Joseph, I don't know if you ever do you take public transportation, you know, border or matatu or Uber, and you walk, you know, you sit in, and the guy's talking to you. You know, he's talking to you in the Uber, and he's waiting for an answer, and he's not getting an answer, and he's wondering what's wrong with this guy. Does it something like that ever happen?
Yes. Yes, it does. When we enter into a public matatu, even today, when we entered into a public transport, like before I came through public transport, and the conductor was like saying something that I couldn't hear. So I could see some signs, 7, 4. So I had to read. So I decided our Kenya does not understand persons with disability and that they are deaf among the population. But yes, many times I get frustrated because I see the mouth moving, but there's nothing coming. And then when people pass, that's what they do when now the conductor comes. Now, this is a smart man who's a passenger seated in a public transport, and that's what I do. So what are you saying? That's what I usually ask. And then the person sitting next to me is like shocked. So we have a deaf person here, but now I can't be able to communicate. So many a times they are ashamed. So we show through gestures, what do you want? So sometimes through the phone, that's what they do, and I have to repeat again. So again and again. So there is a bit of frustration here and there. Sometimes also I ask the passenger who's seated next to me, and that's what they'll say, 70. And that's what I'll send now cash through M-Pesa. So many times it makes me wonder, as deaf individuals, we do suffer. And when I want to alight, if it is a border, many border individuals take advantage of us deaf persons. I will say it clearly, they take advantage of us. So they will ask, so from here to that place, how much is it? And they'll think that, this is an idiot now who's come to my place. And they'll tell me either 30, 80, and I know the distance is not that long. So something that will cost 100, they will say 300 or over. And when you board, the distance is short, they'll say, please, let's first start with fuel. So they many times take advantage of us when we are traveling. And remember, there is also no helmet there. And when you have a helmet, now you can also be able to lip read. So we do face a lot of challenge when we have to use public transport.
That is very frustrating, huh? That's extremely frustrating. Georgina, okay, I haven't talked to you in like 10 years, right? But now you're a co-founder, you're a director of this outfit. What's life been like since?
So I remember the last time we spoke, I was at KNAD. I was an administrative secretary for the Kenya National Association of the Deaf. That was in 2014, and then I moved to teaching in a high school for the deaf for about 5 years. As I mentioned before, I realized the number of challenges that the deaf people are having, and I wanted to close that gap. So for the last 6 years, I've been working at Studio KSL, which is at eKitabu, where we develop accessible, early-grade reading materials specifically for deaf and hard of hearing learners. This is because 98% of these deaf children start school without any language, and their first exposure to sign language is when they get into school. The teachers are not fluent in sign language, and they do not have enough signs to support their language acquisition. So this is a gap that I've seen in deaf children: lack of early language, and also challenges in their academics. So providing accessible teaching and learning materials for sign language so they can look at it and, watch, understand the curriculum and support the teachers also to improve in their sign language skills and to also teach effectively. And apart from the professional work, I got married. I have 3 boys.
How many?
3 boys.
You have 3 boys.
I have twins and 1 last one.
Can they?
Yes.
Can they all hear?
Yes, they are all hearing.
How?
The good
how
thing
old are the
about
twins? How old are the twins?
they'll soon be 3 years.
So, and the other one, and the older one?
The last one is 1 year.
Oh, good Lord, you didn't waste any time, did you?
No, I did not waste. Why wait?
And your husband is not deaf. And excuse me for asking these stupid questions, but
My husband is hearing. So I remember when he was wooing me, he told me, I told him, if you want to woo me, then you need to learn sign language. He said yes. And imagine, he took up the sign language for 3 months and he learned. And I thought, okay, that's the one.
wow. I could ask a couple of rude questions, but I won't because, well, congratulations. Monica, do you have any children?
Yes, I do. I have 1 child. She's currently 10 months.
10 months. She can hear?
Yes, she's hearing. She's hearing. She can hear.
Does she know her mother's deaf?
I don't think so. Only when we're trying to fall asleep, she'll just tap me or just to get my attention, she would touch me. But I don't know. I know eventually she will learn that I'm deaf.
Do yours know that you are deaf?
Yes. The twins, they sign more than they actually speak.
They sign?
Yes. They sign mom, they'll say food, they'll say they want to sleep, TV, just a few signs. They can.
Yeah.
Yes, at 2 years they can sign.
Yeah. Joseph, any children?
Yes. Yes, I'm a father.
How many?
2.
2. How old?
One is big, the other one is small.
One is big, the other one is small.
One is about 10, about 7, and the other one is 1 year.
Do they know that their father is deaf?
Yes. Yes, they know I'm deaf. And they'll sign a few things.
They can sign.
Yes. Maybe if I bring them here, they can beat you in signing.
Where did he meet his wife? No, I don't want the long story. I just want the short story.
Short. You're going deep, but however. Yes, we met in town here in Nairobi. Meet me, I'll tell you deep about it.
Richard, what about you? You married? You children?
Yes, I'm married to a beautiful girl. We have 3 children, girls, all girls.
All hearing?
All hearing. And they can sign. They can sign, but the small one is still learning sign language.
And do they ask you? Did they ask you questions in the beginning? Did they ask, why can't Daddy hear us when we're screaming his name?
You see, children grow very well. They do not realize anything that their father has a problem with their mother. You see, this challenge comes from the society or community until someone gets to meet them and tell them, you mean your father is deaf? Oh my, that's not good. So they start feeding the children with negatives. But without that, children just see their families, they are happy with their parents. They see other deaf people coming to their house and enjoy. They don't see any difference with other families. But it comes from the society where they now start getting those stereotypes from society. And in a way, they start now seeing things different. But so far, things are good.
And you know, the worst part about society, like you say, Richard, is the fact that, you know, the people out there who will lock the children in a room somewhere because they say it's bad. It's, you know, bad for the family. It's black magic. It's a curse on the family. That's what they all say, which is not true. It's not the case.
Yes, but one parent whom in the course of my work, I met a parent who told me, normally many people say children with disability are normally locked away from the community. But one parent challenged me. She told me it's more of protecting their children, because if a child maybe has a complex disability, if they release them freely, they'll most likely go to the neighbors, maybe farm, they'll go pick someone's banana, start eating, and they'll be beaten, they'll be hurt. So they prefer just to lock them, try to do something and come back. So it's a bit of a balance, because it's easy to judge. But if you look at the parent, she has other children she has to feed, but no one is there to help her. So sometimes she just tries to lock, runs and tries to do something economic and comes back to the family. But in other communities, it's clear, yes, there are things families fear, society seen, because people start saying it's a curse, maybe you'll after someone who has a disability. That's why you ended up giving birth to a child with disability. So sometimes parents are also hiding shame. They're afraid that people start judging them and maybe not interacting with their children. Other children mock their children, so very many things.
Yeah, absolutely. Joseph, what do you miss most about your hearing days?
Personally, I can say I come from a family where they are all in the army. My brother, my father was in the army, and I wanted really to join the army. But now, to have a gun, so I really want to be in the army and own a gun.
He's also a comedian as well, huh? You're a funny guy.
Yes, I just try sometimes to identify with what I want. And I'll say that I'm not funny. Just try to, to see what I can be able to take and learn. But many times when I was doing the practice, I was the last person. And therefore they said, now during the army practice, since you are the last person and you are deaf, you cannot work or you cannot join the army. But I do know in America there are those who join the army and they are deaf. However, in Africa, they can't. And I know if some can drive, why not us? So I wanted to ask Jeff, have you heard of a deaf person who's driving, ever having an accident? A car accident, have you ever had?
Can you drive?
Why not?
But how you be able to, explain to me.
Thank you very much. I'll say I like to help individuals, all people understand that we use our eyes when driving, isn't it? And what are the side mirrors for? And the rear view mirror, what is it for? Because that is what we use when driving, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we use our eyes and the rear view mirrors. And I'll say we are better observers than hearing individuals. We get to focus and to capture a lot.
Very good. Monica, what do you miss most? I mean, you were 2 months old, so you wouldn't know. But what do you miss most?
Well, now currently that I'm a mom, I wish I could hear my baby cry, because when I'm not near her and she's crying, then I'm not able to tell that she's crying, and she'll cry for a long time until someone comes and touches me and just lets me know that your baby is crying. So that's why I prefer having the child next to me. And I'm looking forward to when now she'll start crawling and coming to me by herself and just to tell me, or now I'll have to live also, currently I have to live with my sister or my mom or a nanny to help me know that my child is crying. Honestly, that's the only thing I wish I could, because now I rely on my eyes to know if my child is crying. Yeah.
Just tell Monica she doesn't want to hear that loud crying of babies. She does not want to hear.
You don't want to hear that. Okay, yeah, it's okay. That's you. You're right. You might be right. It's okay. True. But honestly, I feel like I also would want to see my baby or hear my baby cry, because I would be able to know if what's the problem, what's the challenge that she's experiencing, because I'm also feeling pain when I see her crying and not able to hear that because I always rely on my eyes now.
Do you want to have more children?
No, just one, maybe. I don't know about the future, though.
Richard, what do you do for a living?
Oh, I'm a director at Sense International. I'm an inclusion champion.
What is that in English?
Okay, mostly it's about understanding diversity and how we can be influenced by what I call maybe how we perceive things. So you realize, for example, in disability, there are those people we call it ableism, where you see persons with disability as inferior. So our organization will try to work with complex disabilities, including deaf blindness, just to ensure that we break those barriers and they're able to do something with their life. They can live independent lives. We support their parents to learn how to support their children who have complex disabilities. We've been supporting various hospitals in Kenya. We've established centers for therapy services. We've also trained learner support assistants just to help such children access education. So I'm happy that I use my skills and knowledge just to break those barriers in the society and make sure that persons with disability are not discriminated against.
Sure. Joseph, what do you do?
I work as a disability program officer for a local-based organization, an NGO, and we implement policies, capacity build, as well as research, so that we make sure that when we implement our policies around, we are able to implement our policies from the research that we've done. We also do system strengthening, and I would say that when it comes to policy, deaf individuals do not have clear information. So we generally work with government, collaborate with government to come up with clear policies that will help the society as well and improve their health accessibility.
Georgina, you've been fighting for the rights of people with disabilities for a long time. Does this government, has it helped? Does it help? Have you found a difference from 10 years ago to today in the way the government treats and helps people with disabilities, people who are deaf?
I think Kenya, we have very good policies, I would say, but the implementation, that's the big question. We develop very good policies, different policies in place. We have the Disability Act. Yes, the Disability Act in Kenya. We have the UN Convention, but implementing those policies, I don't think we are doing that. Maybe specifically in the area of education, we know for a fact that deaf children need accessible education. And what does that mean? Having expertise in sign language. And sometimes we employ teachers who do not know sign language as yet. The teacher comes to school without any sign language to learn from the children. The teacher is supposed to be teaching. So who is teaching the other? So that delays the learning. So the learners are not able to learn. So those are some of the things that we have observed that needs to be addressed, like employing teachers who are skilled in sign language and not learning from the deaf learners. And also the curriculum needs to be adapted. We know now that we have the CBC curriculum, but has it been adapted to match the deaf learners? Not as yet. So up to now, CBC curriculum has JSS music lessons for deaf learners. How are you teaching, ta and te and ti and, for a deaf child? How does that help them at all? Including chemistry. We still have issues where the deaf learner are supposed to answer questions about a sound or a popping sound. If you mix these two chemicals, what sound comes from it? I'm a deaf person, what am I supposed to answer? That means I failed the exam. So the system so far has been failing the deaf learners. We have been complaining that deaf children get E's, but who is to blame? It is not the deaf children themselves, it's the system which is not addressing effectively all the issues that are there for the deaf children. Yep.
That's a very good point. I mean, CBC is challenging enough as it is. Imagine for people who are hearing impaired, who are deaf. It must be a nightmare. Georgina, you're being very polite to this government. It is a nightmare.
Yes, I agree.
All right, we're going to take a break, come back, and we're going to be joined by a woman who is raising a deaf child and a child who was raised by 2 deaf parents. What a show. I feel like I'm shouting today. I don't know why. I'm kidding. What a show. It's a silent bench today with some amazing, amazing people who have overcome insurmountable odds. I love this story. It's a Kenyan story. And none of these people ever gave up. Richard, Georgina, Monica, Joseph, none of them ever gave up. Amazing. Keep tweeting at Koinange Jeff, at Citizen TV Kenya. The hashtag is JKLIVE. JKLIVE takes a break. We'll be back in a moment. I've completely failed you.